Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to the third session on our topic of the aging population and pension and retirement. This is our last session, and in this session, as normal as this is our awareness program, you need to consult the professionals before taking any decision. I'm not regulated, so I cannot give you full-fledged advice on that. Under English law, you have to be regulated. It's a very specialized area, very technical. So I'm just giving you a bird's eye view about what we're going to cover. The third session is about the fiqh implication about occupational pension. As we have discussed the first session about the issue of longevity risk and why we got to look into it, session 2 we discussed about the retirement and the concept of pension, mainly in UK and in the West. And now I want to discuss the fiqh implication of that. The reason is there is a social construction for Islamic finance worldwide, and pension has not been well developed in that arena. This is why I feel it's important to make a fiqh analysis, and like any other products, you will find there are differences of opinion, which we must respect. We must respect the ulama for their views. However, here I'm just going to lay down some issues. I'm going to raise some issues for you to consider. Before I do that, I just want to quickly recap what we have done because of the technicalities of pension. It's a huge industry going into trillions of dollars. Alone in the West alone, we're looking about $80 trillion liabilities on the pension funds. So first, remember, we say there are the state pension, which is mandatory. It is what we call unfunded pension. That is the generation paying the tax now. That tax money is used to pay the next generation who is old. The generation that has passed. They are old, they are in retirement. So these are like your pay-as-you-go types of tax. And this is your pension that you will get from the state. It is mandatory in many countries. And the origin of it is go back to the Victorian time where we had the poor law, which was meant again to help the poor people who are elderly. Okay, so it has in England its own origin as compared to the Bismarck system in Germany, which was different. So bottom line is to help the poor people who are in the poor people or those who are not better off in their old age. So that's your state pension. The second one, as we mentioned, is your occupational pension. As it comes from your work, your occupation. And that one is, under certain circumstance, it will be mandatory as well. But this one is a funded pension. What does that mean? You will contribute and your employer also will contribute, unlike the state pension, where the state does not contribute. And this one will be managed by your employer, or they will pass it on to another fund manager to look into it. There's a lot of regulation on that, lot of regulation, okay? So, and the third one is where you as an individual, you decide to create your own pension pot. This is known as your personal pension, which is very voluntary. You take the responsibility of it. So these are the three main streams of it. Of course, if you retire, you're getting your pension, nothing prevents you from working part-time somewhere else. Some scholars have said this is a fourth stream of income for your old age, because many people, they're old or they've been forced to retire legally, but they got a lot of experience. They can use this experience as consultants. So that also can become a source of income for you. Now, the point here, what I want to raise, a very serious issue we find is because of the aging population. In the past, the government, if you read the history of pension in the West, you'll find that it was mainly the government trying to shoulder the civil servants. Okay, then later on, the private sector came in as a means to negotiate with the employees. But as time goes on, passes by, government is not in a position to sustain an aging population, and they want to pass it on to you as the employees. When it comes to you, you have two problems. One is, for example, the government may increase the age you will retire. It used to be 60, then it became 65, then 67. In some countries, it's going to 70. So you got to work 10 more years extra. Then you have your employer as well, who instead of giving you a defined benefit, he doesn't want to take that risk. He's put defined contribution. That is, you got to look after the pot. It's not his responsibility. He will contribute, you contribute, but you must say where you want it to be invested. So there is a major shift in many countries from a defined benefit, where the employee, he knows how much he's getting, he's more or less contented, assured about a sum of money, towards a defined contribution. Like we have seen now, there has been big holes in the pension pots with the market crash in the stock market, where the pension funds will invest their money. The rate of return is not there. So there have been a big hiccups for the pensioners in Europe. Okay, so the defined contribution is problematic. And who will be able to help that? Those who got a lot of data, because we are dealing with figures, and usually the insurance companies who will entertain those data, and they're developing a lot of products known as a longevity bond. I'm not going to talk about this here. This is a topic of its own. So because of this major change in the demographic, the physiognomy of the population, instead of, for example, 60% of the burden of the aging population was on the shoulder of the government, they want to reverse it, make it, for example, 40, they will take 60, goes on the private sector, and the private sector will give you a defined contribution. So that is a problem that we are faced. Okay, so we have to position ourselves when we decide to go with the pension industry. So we have the typology of pension arrangements. You got your defined benefit. The risk is on the shoulder of the boss. Defined contribution, which is for the employee, and the defined ambition, which has come into existence recently in UK. And of course, you got the typology of pension. What type of contract? One is how you contribute, and one is how your money is protected, and you will get your annuity fund. So this is what you call the typology of registered pension schemes under UK law. You have the registered pension scheme. One is a trust-based, that is your occupational pension. The other one is contract-based, which is personal pension. Remember, you can also have where you make an insurance contract as well. I mentioned that in my previous talk. Now, when you look at the combination of it, because the employer doesn't want to bear the risk, the employee doesn't want to bear the risk, therefore we have to find a way in between. So we can have a defined benefit where all the risk is on the shoulder of the employer, or the defined contribution. In that spectrum, there are a lot of combination of products coming. You can have, for example, defined benefit average salary, or you got a mixture of defined ambition and defined benefit, or you got to have defined ambition coupled with defined contribution. So there is a wide spectrum of products that the firms are offering, and you negotiate. That's up to you, what is in your contract of employment. So what is important here is we have to appreciate there is an evolution on the type of products being put on the market, very volatile. Now, the issue is it halal or haram? We have seen that retirement itself, from a Sharia point of view, we are supposed to work. However, legally, maybe we don't have to work. Like, for example, Anas radiallahu ta'ala, if my memory serves me well, till his old age, he worked up to the age of 103 years old, if I remember properly. And he himself buried so many of his grandchildren, about 78, he buried himself, because he got a special dua from Rasulullah, and he had a lot of barakah in his orchard. He was working till his old age. So, do we continue on this level we work? Or we take the retirement. In today's time, as we have seen, the economic landscape has changed, the employment work has changed, etc. So we are opting for retirement if this facility is given to us. But the problem is with the product. Like any financial product, we have problem of riba, gharar, maisir. With defined contribution, that is, you are giving money, your employer is giving money, you got a tax exemption to a certain extent, okay? Therefore, that pot of money, you take the responsibility where you want it to be invested. So you bear the brunt of it, a big risk you're taking. There's no problem with that. Problem is, from a fiqh point of view, if the money is invested in the wrong avenues, is not Sharia compliant. That is where the problem is. The second problem you might have, again, which you got to talk to your muftis and your ulama, is the zakat. Because you have control over it, there are zakat implication there. And from an economic point of view, if inflation is 3%, you're paying 2.5% zakat, then what will be the purchasing power of that money after 40 years? You have to work that with your accountants, with the ulama, etc. I'm just highlighting those issues for you to consider. There are products on the market as well to look into the zakat issue. Regarding defined benefit, you got absolutely no control over it. And that is where the problem comes in. With defined benefit, there is a risk that there is a riba issue because you don't have control. They're investing it for you, fine. Then you are receiving payment of an equal amount. You're contributing X amount, you're getting double X amount, and which is guaranteed to you by your employer. There is also the investment being made. We don't know where this money is going, right? So there are a problem of riba in the pot itself. The second point here is gharar. Why is it gharar? You are unknown number of years you're going to live to receive this money from your boss. There is an element of maisir also in there. Insurance company will underwrite the risk based on its actuarial value. For example, if you go to your pension pot, say for example you put, over the years you have put 10,000, right? And if you want to, they tell you it's worth 10,000. If you say, okay, I want to cancel my pot, you do not get 10,000, you get less, right? They will not give it to you before maturity. So it got a value, it got a mathematical value on paper, but if you want to take that pot of money, not all countries will give it to you. So this is another thing you got to look into. There's an element of maisir also in there, which you got to be careful with defined benefit. There are many fatwas on that. I've read it. There are some ulama who are of the view that despite there are problems with defined benefit, they apply the concept called istihsan, which is deeper analogy. Why they're using it? Because they tell you got to look after the well-being of the people who are contributing. There is no solution. They say that why it should be overlooked, these unknown figures that we are talking is, first of all, there is hardly any dispute about it, number one. That is a reason. And number two, the reason they put forward is that there is an issue about there is no harm really faced by the people. You are getting your money because your employer is guaranteeing you. This is open to discussion. I respect those great ulama who are trying to give solutions to this problem, and we respect those views. There might be other view who will say no. Istihsan, this view or arguments raised to apply istihsan might be a bit too simplistic. If you look at the pension law, you go in the depth in the calculation of the pension, the mathematical formula being used, etc. There might be some opposite views as well with defined benefit. However, these are the two views which I have put in front of you. Whatever be the position. Now, there is an issue of defined ambition where you are being promised a minimum amount by your employer, but still you carrying the burden. You can interpret that promise to be maybe a gift from your employer. It's just a promise. It is unilateral. It is not bilateral. Now, From an Islamic point of view, let's be a bit more realistic. With all those problems we have, we might need to apply our mind, especially the financial engineers in this ummah. We got to look into developing a product which is more endogenous, built within Sharia itself, taking into account social finance and the moral economy. Until and unless we don't think in those lines, we're going to replicate and innovate existing conventional product and make it become Sharia compliant and not Sharia based, where everything is from Sharia. We're going to have this problem of some doubt in our mind, this and that. So we must look at the law, at the regulation, and look into social finance and also moral economy. Look at the Islamic ethos. That's very important. And I'm going to leave it to you. Let the experts think about it. There are many, many issues I want to raise. I will put maybe inshallah on social media or LinkedIn some academic papers I have written. I have also, alhamdulillah, written my doctoral thesis on that, and inshallah it will be published. I don't know when. We'll try to make dua Allah brings it to light. It takes time to publish a book. And if Allah wills, I hope this will be my small contribution, try to alleviate the problems that accompany the aging population. We must look after our elderly people. This is our wealth of wisdom. We must not lose them. We must support them. Subhanallah bihamdihi. Subhanakallahumma nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.